There are so many comparison videos between the latest action cameras, and anytime a new one comes out, there's a tidal wave of paid sponsored videos that follows claiming that their camera is the best. And full disclosure, this is one of them. Yes, DJI sent me an Osmo Action 4 and a GoPro Hero 12 to mess around with, but instead of plowing through these spec sheets and pixel peeping every frame, I kind of want this video to appeal to the average cyclist who just wants to document their rides and put together some fun videos with the maximum quality to time investment ratio. In this video, the approach that I'll take is just to walk you through how I typically use an action camera to capture on-bike footage, because I imagine it's the same for many of you, and I feel like not as many videos are talking about these basic and practical features. Okay, so let's just start with the form factor and how I typically mount an action camera while riding a bike. Now you can mount these cameras just about anywhere. Your handlebars are on top of your helmet, but for me, the most immersive video comes from the chest mount. Now I like this shot because you get the sense that you're actually in the action. Now for clips where you can't see the handlebars or the rider's arms in the frame, it could just as well be a drone shot, and for me, there's not enough context to make it feel like a bike ride. So for these types of shots, I mainly use a chest mount, which many cyclists use. Now when you're in a riding position, your torso is leaning forward to some degree, and so to get a usable shot, you generally want the camera to be angled out a little bit like this. Now the reason I'm bringing this up is because now what you have is basically a cantilever, which needs to be supported at the base by the chest mount and the harness. The bigger and heavier the cantilever is, the more prone the shot is to bouncy and shaky footage. So to combat shaky footage, we can consider two solutions. You have mechanical stabilization and digital stabilization. Mechanical stability has to do with eliminating the actual movement from the camera, while digital stability has to do with stabilizing otherwise shaky footage in software after the fact. Now one way to mechanically stabilize a chest-mounted camera would just be to cinch the crap out of the straps until you can barely breathe, or you can reduce the magnitude of the moment created by the cantilevered camera by using a lighter, more compact camera. Now the DJI Action 4 is both lighter and smaller in footprint than the Hero 12. And even though these differences are small, I can personally feel the difference when wearing them chest mounted. Now because the Action 4 is a bit smaller than the Hero 12 and a touch lighter, for me it feels like it doesn't bounce around quite as much while riding, which is a good thing. And then there's the digital stability. Now both of these cameras have amazing onboard stability. The Hero 12 with the Hyper Smooth and the Action 4 with their Rock Steady. But these are both just brand names for essentially the same function, and they both work really well. You just have to be aware that the greater the digital stability effect, the more it's going to crop into your footage, and in some cases it can negatively affect the immersiveness of the shot. For instance, here the shot is using basic Rock Steady, which preserves a really wide field of view, which I personally like, but at some spots where the trail gets really rowdy, you can see that even with Rock Steady on, it's just not enough to compensate for the camera movement. But then when I turn on the Rock Steady Plus, which is the maximum digital stability effect, the motion is super smooth. It's basically perfect, but it does crop in just a little bit more, so you kind of lose some of the edges, which in my opinion contributes to the sense of speed and the immersion of the clip. Anyways, all this to say that the digital stabilization on both cameras is great, but the DJI Action 4 is a touch smaller and lighter, which does help with the mechanical stabilization. So another thing that seems minor, but to me actually makes a big difference in the user experience, is the startup time. Now if you're out shooting and something really interesting is happening, maybe your buddy's about to hit a big jump, or there's a really cool section of trail coming up, every second counts. And so the time it takes from pressing record to actually recording frames to the SD card is pretty important to me. Now, both the Action 4 and the Hero 12 have a quick capture capability, meaning you can just hit the record button when the camera is off, and it'll start up the camera and use the last settings and start recording right away. Now both of these cameras do it pretty quickly, but the Action 4 does it a couple of seconds faster, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but it can actually mean the difference between getting the shot or not. The Action 4 also has a cool feature where if you use quick capture, once you're done with your shot, it'll count down from 3, and if you do nothing, it'll turn off. But within those 3 seconds, you also have a chance to swipe and go back to the home screen. Now it's a minor detail, but from a user point of view, I actually like having this feature, and it'll prevent you from having to restart the camera if you just want to keep using the camera after a quick capture shot. And then as for mounting the camera, yes, it's true GoPro is a pioneer in the action camera space, the OG action cam if you will, and the standard GoPro fingers are pretty ubiquitous at this point. However, the newer generation cameras are incorporating magnetic quick release mounts, and it's seriously a game changer. And for reference, it used to be that if you got a chest mounted shot and then wanted to change some settings on the camera or review some footage, you'd have to unthread the thumb screw and then do what you need to do on the camera screen and then rethread the screw, making sure you get the camera back to the right angle so that you don't miss your next shot. And all of this ends up taking a significant amount of time. But DJI is now using a quick release mount which entirely solves this issue. The magnets in the mount are mostly just to center the camera and help locate the clips, which are actually what hold the camera in place. The magnetic mount is super secure and there's no play, but releasing the camera is dead simple. And what's really nice is you can leave the base of the mount on the chest strap so you don't mess with the angle of the camera once you reattach it. Super big leap forward for action cameras in my opinion, and for some reason GoPro still isn't on board with these changes. And then the last thing that I'll mention is the sound quality. Now, people use these cameras for many different reasons, and so I'll talk about the onboard sound quality as well as your external microphone options. The onboard camera sound quality from both cameras is pretty good when the shot is static and there's no wind.
So a couple things we can test here, obviously the audio. So this is the audio coming straight out of the DJI Action 4. This is what it sounds like. This is my voice, blah, blah, blah. And this is the audio coming straight out of the GoPro Hero 12. This is my voice, blah, blah, blah.
However, when it gets windy, both cameras tend to struggle a little bit, but I think the Action 4 is the clear winner here.
Gearing could be a little higher, but I get it. It is an adventure bike. Oh, it's a lot of wind. Yeah, I'm topping out here. Gearing could be a little higher, but I get it. It is an adventure bike. Oh, it's a lot of wind. Yeah, I'm topping out here.
The sound is heavily filtered on both cameras, but the Action 4 just does a better job filtering out the bandwidth of frequencies of the wind noise and leaving other sounds like dialogue intact. The GoPro, on the other hand, just seems to apply a broadband filter over the entire frequency spectrum, so dialogue and other sounds are really drowned out when there's a lot of wind. Now, yes, most users who are using these cameras on a regular basis will probably just stick on these wind muffs for either of these cameras, which I think really improves the sound quality in the presence of wind, but in general, I think the Action 4's digital wind filtering is a lot better. I should also note that both clips that you saw were in standard wind filtering mode. Now, for some of us, getting the best possible sound quality is actually really important. So instead of relying on the tiny internal mics, we'd rather capture audio using an external mic. Now with the GoPro Hero 12, the only real way to do this is to buy their $50 dongle and then connect your own external mic. You also need a different battery door, and so the actual footprint of the camera gets bigger and heavier, which can affect your mechanical stabilization. So in my opinion, probably the best thing about the Action 4 is the recent ability to pair their DJI Mic 2 to the Action 4 via Bluetooth. And it works really well too. Once they're paired, you just turn on the camera and the mic, and that's it. There's no extra hardware, there's no adapters. It's truly just plug and play, and it really does make a big difference. Now, regarding the pairing of the Mic 2, there are a couple of minor quirks that I'll talk about in a different, more in-depth video on the Action 4, but it's still leagues better than anything else out there right now in terms of high-quality audio in an action camera. So I managed to get through an entire action camera video review without talking specs. I'll leave those for the bigger tech channels. Hopefully you got a different perspective on these cameras here. Primarily my experience with both of these cameras in a specific use case, which is cycling. Now there's a bunch of other stuff that I could talk about on the Action 4, like the battery life, menu navigation, the touchscreen responsiveness, and the reliability, but I'll leave those for another dedicated video that I'm planning to do on the Action 4. Now again, this is a sponsored video by DJI. I just want to be clear on that, but I truly have been reaching for the Action 4 way more than the GoPro these days. Now for most of my videos, you'll generally see a combination of footage from the Action 4 and one of the Insta360 360 cameras. Now the GoPro is definitely the industry veteran. I mentioned in my Ace Pro video that I've had almost every iteration of the GoPro since the original Hero, and there's no question that they make great cameras. But the newest DJI Osmo Action 4 is a worthy adversary, and in many ways improves upon the success of the Hero 12, and for that reason I've been preferring it a lot more lately. Now if you have any questions about my experience with either one of these cameras, just feel free to drop them down below and we'll make sure and get back to as many as we can. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.